Hi everybody, this photograph was taken of me and my sister in about 1953 I think, probably the coronation. You can see that I was wearing a Union Jack and I think a dicky bow, and my sister had red, white and blue in her hair, so yeah, I think it would be the coronation. Some people thought it was for Easter parade, but I think the coronation. And you can see the living conditions at that time. The wall behind us was looked as though it's not been pointed for who knows when, and the houses behind that wall were led onto a main road, and the main road in that particular area had lots of shops. One of the shops was a barber's shop, was a butcher's on there, there's I think a shop for selling vegetables. I know there was one for selling pheasants and stuff like that, and I know close by there was a clothes shop where I got my first pair of long trousers. Now you can see that also that we were all thin at that time, and in fact we probably were looking underweight, but what was underweight at that time wasn't underweight. Everybody looked like that. But the other thing to say is that you can see that our shoes have been blacked, and it came up in like a silvery colour, black at that time. And we were, what can I say, we were happy with our lot really, because we didn't know any different. But anyone that's seen my other vlogs will know that we had to put up with a lot of soot, and I did mention that we sneezed on holiday when we got older, and soot came down our noses, and that's how the air was polluted at that time. But my father had come out of the army. He'd been in there 6 years, and I found out later he was an exemplary soldier, but he came out with nothing, and we had to borrow coal, and you shouldn't have let people have coal if you worked in a mine, but we couldn't have got through any other way until he got a job at the pit in the Barnsley main pit in the colliery in Barnsley, South Yorkshire, and then he was entitled to about 5 tons, I think, of coal a year for working there as part of the mining system. But before we got the coal, our neighbours who were straight across from us used to let us get bath in their tin bath, and the water was heated by their free coal, and it was in an outbuilding that there was kind of like a stove in there that boiled water. I forgot what to call it now, but I know it was in the corner, and water was in it, and it was coal fired, and the coal heated the water, and then the water went into the bath, and we had our bath, we bathed across the road from where we lived until we were able to get coal. And then what Dad and Father used to do to me, he used to roll me up in a peg rug. A peg rug, for you people that don't know, was a rug made out of bits of old clothing that were, and they were put through some kind of a mesh at the back and made into rugs, and they were very thick. And so my father rolled me up in a peg rug and carried me across the street so that I didn't get cold, and then I went to bed. Now, at that time, my overcoat was either on my bed or on my back. And that wasn't unusual because we could only have one overcoat. And the other thing was, before Dad was worked at the pit, the bedrooms were freezing cold. There was ice on the inside of the glass, and we weren't on our own on that. There was a lot more people in the same situation as we were, but it was very, very cold in winter. And also, we had a neighbour, I think they called her Mrs. Machin, and he always called people by their surname at that time. And she had a mangle, and for people that doesn't know what a mangle is, it was 2 rollers with a big big round thing on it at one side, with a mangle, with an handle, and you used to put your clothes through these rollers, and it took all the water out, or a lot of it out, and then the clothes were hung on the line in the same way. And also there was something called a posser, and it was like a brass thing with holes in it, and you pressed it up and down on clothing to make to beat a way of beating the clothing while they were underwater. And then there was another thing, and I've just forgot the name of it, and people used to use it in folk clubs to actually play it. It was like a piece of tin in a wooden square where the clothes were rubbed up and down on this thing to get them clean. But you must understand that the clothing at that time was extra dirty, and that was because clothing from miners took some getting out. The coal dust took some getting out, but also the coal dust in the air that we breathed also took some getting out. Now, people will say that there was community at that time, and there was, and everybody knew one another, and everybody, where they could, helped one another. But there were lots of arguments as well over territorial things and minor things, but they didn't last long. I remember Mum and Dad, Mum in particular, used to get things going for people in the community to have days out at the seaside, and they used to have pea and pie suppers, and they were delicious, and all sorts of things like that where they could make a little bit of money on the side to try and get away from the deprivation, really. We sort of just through child's eyes thought it was all right, but Mum and Dad would have real problems living in conditions like that. As I said earlier, keeping us warm as an example, and keeping food on the table for another. And hungry mouths, I was always hungry. And I had a brother as well as my sister, and my brother was 10 years older than me. So when I was 5, he would be 15. So I never really knew much about him, because at the age of 15, of course, he wanted his own friends. But he still lives quite near to where I live now. And so that's how it was back in the day, and we dressed up where possible. These probably were, I don't think they were hand-me-downs, I think they were reconstituted. Mum used to sew as well, as many people did, and we were always tidy, and we were always clean, and I can only speak about my childhood in Buckley Street in Barnsley, South Yorkshire, as being fond memories. I'll leave it there. Bye for now.